Good morning, warriors. Happy Saturday morning. I wanted to come on camera today and offer a public, a personal love letter, apology to this community. Okay? So, for myself, I've had 2 kidney transplants. I've been living with autoimmunity and CKD for 23 years. So, I have quite a bit of experience in the process from beginning to end and then again. Okay? So, if you value the experiential journey, my channel, my work is for you. You have to have an open mind because I'm coming at this from a very different approach. My career in the world is as a spiritual teacher. I do faith-based yoga ministry, and I've had 3 yoga studios and wellness centers also over the last 22 years. So what I try to do is coalesce how my work in my career has completely evolved and transformed the way I've experienced my journey with CKD. So my public apology to you, my love letter. I want to say this journey is exceptionally hard, and there's a lot of emotions that go along with having CKD or being on dialysis or even going through transplant process or even post-transplant. It doesn't end, folks. The journey is a continuation in different forms. So my goal is to offer tools and different ways to navigate the complex emotions that can often be all over the place and can change very, very rapidly. I offer what has worked for me. And one thing that I see in the community as I come out with this work is it's either kind of like you're for my work or you're against it. And that's okay with me because I understand what's happening on a deeper level. There are people in this community who have not been given the resources that they properly need to navigate this journey. And from what I see, I just want to offer my condolences, my sincere apology, because I've also experienced this. So as I'm saying this to you, it's also remembering when I went through it myself. So I'm actually speaking to you from my own personal experience. I wish that somebody would have addressed these things within me when I first began. This may or may not apply to you, and if it doesn't, simply pass on, okay? So what I want to say is, I'm sorry that you got this diagnosis. I know that it wasn't a part of your plan for your life. I know it may have been sudden and it may have shaken you to your core. You may even, like me in the beginning, gone into periods of denial or gone into periods of, I can fight this, I can cure myself, I won't have to go on dialysis, I can fix myself and work really hard and change my story. I'm sorry that you had to learn to accept something that wasn't expected. Something that was so challenging, something that was so difficult. I'm sorry that it affected the trajectory of your life, right? Like me, I was just about to go to college when this all happened to me. I was young. I was 20. This was not my plan. And I'm sorry for you, for those of you out there who this was not in your playbook that you knew of consciously, right? I'm also sorry that you've had to make so many adjustments in your life to stay alive, to try to feel good and persevere and go on from day to day. It's very, very hard. I'm sorry to those of you who this has made significant impacts on your family, on the lives of your children, on the lives of your spouses. It's something that we didn't mean to happen, right? And it can sometimes be very overwhelming, the impact that this has on others. But they do love you, right? And I just wanted to say to you, I see you, and I'm sorry that you've had to adjust in a way that it may have impacted others in your life. It's part of the process. But I know the deep feelings that we hold as the patient and how sometimes we feel about how this condition has really affected every area of our life. I see you. I'm sorry that on your journey, you've maybe seen doctors that weren't appropriate. Maybe you were misdiagnosed like I was for close to a year, which almost led to my death. I'm sorry that you've had to deal with issues surrounding insurance. I'm sorry that you've had to fight for specific coverage for you just to get the proper care. I'm sorry that you maybe had to quit your job because you had to take care of your health. These are all things that are incredibly overwhelming and require us to radically accept something that is completely unexpected, okay? I'm sorry that on your journey, you came in contact with people that weren't quite nice to you, that people that didn't understand, that people maybe didn't realize how sick you were because of how you looked, and they made judgments. I'm sorry if you got denied help when you really needed help. Our system needs so much improvement. That's why I'm doing these videos, to bring awareness to what we have to deal with day to day. Again, this might not be your story, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this is the story of the collective community as more of a whole, okay? You may have had to fight systems to just simply get the proper help you need, okay? So not only are you fighting for your own physical survival, you're fighting for your mental health, your emotional health, and sometimes you have to fight against others just to stay alive and stay in the game. And I'm sorry that certain people don't understand. And I'm sorry that institutions, certain doctors, insurance plans, I'm sorry that they don't get it. They don't always see it for what it is. They haven't experienced it. Even some of the most respected doctors in the medical field, they know the information. They've studied. They've been indoctrinated with how to treat, but they have not felt the complexity of emotion that comes along with this process. And sometimes they can have a poor bedside manner, and sometimes they can be downright cruel. And that's when we need to take action and go out and do more work and find a better practitioner that suits us. I'm sorry that this community as a whole, in the grand scheme of awareness, gets very little recognition, okay? There are other diseases, and I'm not picking on any diseases. A disease is a disease, and it's challenging no matter what it is. But there is a lot of support in the world for other diseases. There's a lot of awareness, a lot of funding, just much better resources than what we have, okay? So there are nonprofits for kidney care. We all know what they are, and they do their best to bring the recognition and the support. But really, on a grand scale, there's just not enough recognition and discussion and awareness about kidney health, chronic kidney disease, ways in which we can have better preventative measures, especially with things like diabetes or hypertension. There's just not enough widespread global awareness around kidney disease. And we deserve it. It's very, very prevalent. I think it's 1 in 9 people that are diagnosed with CKD. So we deserve more awareness. And I'm sorry that the world hasn't caught on with how magnificent of a group of souls that we are, and how complex it is for us to navigate, because it doesn't go away. You're always managing and transforming and accepting and surrendering and fighting. It's exhausting at times, okay? So I'm sorry that we don't get better resources yet. Hopefully that's going to change, and very, very soon. And kudos to the nonprofits and the people and the organizations who are trying to raise awareness about CKD, about our options, about dialysis and our options there, and about transplant and our options there. And once you're transplanted, the journey does not end, folks. It's different. It's another transformation. I've had 2 transplants, which means I've had to go through the journey not once but twice. And it was hard both times. Okay? So we need better resources and better recognition on a global scale. And again, grateful for those who work on it, but we need more. I'm sorry for those of you who have complexities with your health and you fight daily adverse reactions to medications. Like me, a lot of the issues I struggle with today are because of side effects of long-term medication I've taken for my original condition. So that's something to consider. I'm sorry for those of you who have to get a lot of surgeries or your dialysis accesses clot and you're at the vascular center and going to the hospital. I've been there. It's exhausting and overwhelming and it's frustrating, and I'm sorry that you have to deal with this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm also sorry that maybe you weren't told about transplant and your options. I'm sorry if you weren't informed properly of your options as a dialysis patient. I'm sorry if it took days, months, years for you to get the proper information. I'm sorry about that. When I was in dialysis 1 of 3 times, the last time I got to know my crew really well. And there were a lot of people who just did not simply have the proper information. And you must be your own advocate. We all understand this. But when you're really in a bad physical state, you are somewhat reliant on the people who are caring for you to do their job and give you the proper information. Okay? So I'm sorry if you've had to wait for proper resources or information to get what you need. Okay? I'm so sorry. The wait for a kidney can be so long. I'm sorry that we don't have a better system at this point to make this process shorter and smoother and more accessible for more people who are able to receive a transplant. Waiting is something that I still struggle with. Patience. I'm almost speechless in that discussing the wait, and how I vacillated from deep faith and hope and knowing that it was going to come to just being completely consumed with, is this ever going to come? Is this the rest of my life? Right? And those are totally normal feelings to have. It's hard to vacillate between a positive emotion and when you're inspired to feel very hopeful and to just being spent and tired and overwhelmed. I'm sorry that you have to figure out in the state that you're in how to navigate all of these complex emotions. I'm sorry if your transplant experience or the social workers or people around the institution or hospital have not been perfect or supportive in ways that you may have needed. Some places are great. We're lucky and fortunate for that. We hear nightmares about other institutions. We're all still learning. They're all still learning. And it can be very difficult, again, when you are overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're tired, you're physically struggling to stay alive. And then you have to deal with other people's problems and crap, especially in the hospital institution, right? The last thing you need as a patient is to hear nurses complain about things or other people complain about things. And I get it, they're human as well, just as we are. But you know what I'm saying. You don't need any more stress with just simply going through this process, okay? So I'm sorry if your experience hasn't been great. I'm sorry for the struggles that you incur. Many of us face it as well, okay? I'm sorry if going through your transplant experience hasn't given you what exactly you thought it would have. Most people, a lot of people, get a transplant. It starts to work pretty soon, and we start this whole other journey of reintegrating into life and trying to deal with everything that just happened to us. Okay, I made a really good video on Urban Health Outreach Media called Dealing with the Effects of CPTSD, Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, Getting into Life Post-Transplant, and Healing Everything You've Been Through emotionally, psychologically, physically, right? Sometimes people don't have that experience. Sometimes there's complications post-transplant, and there can be a very high anticipatory feeling of, okay, I'm going to get this transplant, everything's going to finally be better. And then you have more complexities. And then it's really like, are you serious? Like, again, okay? I get it, folks. I get it. I've been through it. I understand. And I'm sorry. I just want to simply say, I see you. It's okay for us to be vulnerable and honest about our feelings, okay? I'm sorry to those of you who deeply struggle with financial resources because you've been chronically sick for a very long time. You've had to quit your job. You're juggling ways to pay bills and get income while you're so compromised. I'm sorry that it's a struggle and we don't have better resources. I'm sorry for those of you who, like myself, lose Medicare coverage for drugs 3 years post now. We're working on changing that. Hopefully the Senate starts to actually approve this and we really get this running sooner than later, because I know a lot of people who cannot fully reintegrate into life because they can't lose that help. So then they're in a position of being stuck. I'm sorry for those of you who've needed extra care. You've needed to get disability or some sort of SSI or financial help, and then you try to get off it to move back into your life, but somehow you're stuck financially because of insurance or Medicare. It's complex. The system is not perfect, but we need to start to bring awareness and speak out about this stuff so we can have better reintegration results post-transplant. Nobody should feel trapped or stuck financially or feel the limitations after you've been through all of this, okay? Again, this may not apply to you. And if it doesn't, then it's okay. Congratulations, you're one of the lucky ones, okay? What I want to say wrapping this up is, I see the complexities and I want it to come to the surface. That does not mean that I am not grateful for every breath I take, every person I speak to, the work I do in the world. If you know me personally, you know that I am driven and ambitious to be of service with not just the CKD community, but humans and everybody else in general, okay? I work with everybody. I didn't really work with CKD patients specifically until several years ago. I've been working with the general public or people going through any sort of life transformation because it's difficult. But I have a passion for our community. But it's difficult because we need a lot of help. We need a lot of restructuring to better improve these things for patients, okay? Having support groups, online groups is amazing, and it's a supportive way for us to communicate and be vulnerable and be honest, right? But what I will say is this: we must learn that we're trying to help each other. We don't need to attack each other on those sites. We're all going through similar struggles. So be open-minded, okay? Lastly, I want to say that the gratefulness I have is unprecedented, okay? But the struggle is also real, okay? And it's time for me and for everybody to just permit ourselves to be vulnerable and honest and know that I feel with you. I'm right there with you. But I do work diligently to try to make improvement in the community. I don't just work with patients. I very actively consult and work with doctors about restructuring our care and giving them understanding from a traditional or more of a collective patient perspective. And it has not been easy for me, okay? But that doesn't mean that I'm still not a patient. I'm in it right here at the front lines with you all, okay? So what I want to say is I deeply, deeply love this community because it's me. You all are an extension of me somehow. And my goal is to raise awareness so we can improve, all right? When you try to raise awareness to improve, it's good not to be angry. If you need to vent about something, I get it. But if you want to create change, you must take pragmatic, realistic action with grace, honesty, and vulnerability. Okay? So that's all I want to say. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.